Hey everybody. Man, I felt weird not saying something in light of everything that's been going on. The United States is drifting further and further into a state of barbaric fascism. And this has been a long time coming. I mean, seeing this happening in the United States, it's a lot like watching a really toxic couple get a divorce. At first, you're shocked just because it's happening, but then you think about it and you wonder, how did this not happen sooner? We've been living under the business fascism. See, fascism is not just one thing. Like it's not like you can just point at something and go, "Oh, that's the fascism." There are multiple pillars of fascism, and some are more apparent than others because it's through the use of direct force and through the use of direct dominance. But the kind of more subtle business-oriented fascism, well, that's existed in the United States for a very long time now. That's been around, one could argue, since at least Reagan, maybe even longer. So the entirety of my lifetime. And now we're entering a new sect of all that with just this barbaric fascism of force and murder, which is what's been going on. Keith Porter Jr. was murdered by ICE. Renee Good was murdered by ICE. Alex Preddy was murdered by ICE. And they're just getting started unless they are stopped. And ICE needs to be abolished. And beyond that, the people responsible for these deaths need to be held accountable. And I don't know if any of that's going to happen. I do know that a general strike similar to what happened in Minnesota needs to happen nationwide, and it needs to be coordinated and strategically planned so that it can be, a proper shutdown of the American economy. And I think that's the only way, well, not the only way, but among the only ways that we might be able to get out of this mess. And, from bringing it into this show, 1,000, I know some of you know me from Get Your News On with Ron and Status Quo, which, by the way, shout out to all of my colleagues over in Status Quo who are on the ground right now in Minneapolis. And I have other friends on the ground in Minneapolis right now, too. And, the difference between this show and Get Your News On with Ron is that this is not a news and politics show. It is an interview show. However, 1,000, even though it is not a news and politics show, it is every bit as political as Get Your News On with Ron, just in a different way. Because with this show, I am giving 1,000 stories. And these are the guest stories, not mine. But I'm giving 1,000 stories of people who are contributing valuable work to the world, whether it be through creation or policy or activism or whatever it may be. They're contributing value to the world, and they're living a fulfilling life despite living under capitalism. And well, in the micro sense of it all, not every guest may have the exact same political views as myself, because it's certainly not a prerequisite. But it is still very political in the way I just described. And also, one thing that is very universal is that all of these guests are linked by a common thread of empathy, by a common thread of compassion, and by a common thread of being 110% against fascism. That is one thing that is universal and that cannot be compromised on in any way whatsoever. My hometown is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That is a city of bridges, not a city of walls. And I want to build bridges as opposed to walls. That is an important sentiment to remember, especially in times like these. However, it's also important to remember, especially in times like these, that sometimes those walls are necessary. And that people that have the idea of, hey, this group of people shouldn't be allowed to exist, that is not a difference of a political opinion. That's not a different worldview. That is fascism. That is evil. That is eugenics. And it cannot and should not be tolerated. I don't know what the long-term fix for all of this is going to be. I think at this point in time, nobody really does. All we can do is keep looking out for each other, keeping each other safe, and fighting back the best way we can through activism, through communication, through creativity, through whatever your lane may be. And I think there are some things to be hopeful about. There are some bright spots that we've seen. I mean, heck, on this show and other shows I've done and in the circles in which I've dwelled, we've been talking about general strikes for years now. And now all of a sudden it's in the common vernacular of people. Now regular people are talking about a general strike. Even a year ago, that wasn't the case. Hell, less than a year ago, 6 months ago, that wasn't the case. So there is a cause for hope, and I'll, of course, be talking about this more. But I do want to get to today's guest. And in closing, I just want to say, stay safe, look out for each other. And as always, peace, love, and a general strike. Enjoy today's episode. Episode 124, Matt Kirshen. Matt Kirshen is a comedian, writer, and podcast host. He's one of the co-hosts of Probably Science, one of my favorite comedy podcasts that incorporates science news. Matt and I first met at a live show of The Infinite Monkey Cage and then reconnected when I moved to LA. He's one of my favorite comics to watch. Please welcome to the show, Matt Kirshen. Matt Kirshen, good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you as well. Look at that recording started sign that just flashed up. You are a professional.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a happy new year, 2026. What a year. What a time for the world.
I'd say probably about one of the best years that we've had so far. I think everything's going pretty smoothly. I'm in no way stressed. Everything is great, right? We're all pretty chill. Everyone, I'd say this is the year of harmony, isn't it?
Do you ever try to unironically say that to someone just to see their split reaction? Did you ever do somebody someone the other day there was someone that I knew and they were just like, well, the world, God, it's going to hell in a handbasket. And I said, oh, what's wrong? And for a split second, they weren't sure what was going on there with me.
I do sometimes run into that issue. I haven't done that one, but I do sometimes. I like playing the idiot, and I like playing really dry sometimes. I did a really fun show last night. It was a live show. Do you know Chris Duffy? He was from New York. He's in LA now. Great comic, great guy. And he does a bunch of things in the science and comedy world. So we got sort of match made by my old manager a while ago. Sarah Clegman just went like, "This guy's coming to LA. You guys should go for coffee." We did, and we were like, "Okay," and now we're friends. He's a great guy. But I did the show he does called Wrong Answers Only. I think that's the name of it. I hope I'm not I hope I'm not getting the wrong name for the wrong answers. But
It's a cool name.
it sort of matches, yeah, and it makes like comedians and scientists. So there was a scientist on last night. She's an ER doctor and also a climate scientist, and she sort of works at the intersection of medicine and climate. It's really cool stuff. But like my first line, I was like, "Oh, it's cool to be on here." But like it's interesting because you specialize in medicine and climate change, and as someone who believes in neither, I just but the whole order, it was just a bit too it like took us.
Oh, it
like,
took him a second.
Yeah, you know, you just think it's just obviously going to be a joke, but you realize actually.
Well, they might have thought you were visiting from Austin. They didn't know.
Yeah, is that? Is it? You probably know this. I'm trying to. Is it Poe's law? Is that it? That any like right wing, any sufficiently like right wing parody is indistinguishable from the real thing? Is it? I'm gonna have to look this up while we chat, but
Right.
But essentially, you it's impossible to fully accurately parody someone who is sufficiently right wing because that thing exists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you can imagine it, it's there.
Well, I want to start at the beginning, like I always do, and so I know you're from the UK, but where are you from exactly?
I am from. Yeah, here we go. Sorry, very quickly.
Oh, you found it?
It's an adage of internet culture stating that without a clear indication of the author's intent, it's impossible to distinguish between sincere extremism and a parody of extremism.
And what is the word for that? What is the term for that?
Poe's law.
Poe's law. Okay.
Poe, P-O-E. It was because it was coined by a guy called Nathan Poe on a Christian forums message board during a debate about creationism.
And it's
like
one of those
without a winking smiley. What's that, sorry?
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where sometimes people, if you don't have the like slash or the /s, no one will know it's
waving
sarcasm.
the little sarcasm flag. It's the original quote was, "Without a winking smiley or other blatant display of humor, it's utterly impossible to parody a creationist in such a way that someone won't mistake it for the genuine article."
Mm-hmm.
And that's the mistake I ran into last night.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I never heard that before, but now I know Poe's law.
So I grew up basically London suburbs. If you speak to someone from London, they go, "That's not London." But because it was technically Hertfordshire, which is like the next county outside London. But I grew up on the tube map. I grew up inside the M25, which is the motorway ring road that loops around London. So I'm inside that. I'm just before you run out of the Metropolitan line is where I grew up. So the top left-hand corner of the tube map.
And you still get back a good bit, right?
Yeah, I try to go back generally once or twice a year, mostly to visit family and friends. And I'll do a couple of gigs when I'm there just to keep my hand in and make it a work trip and remind people in the UK that I'm alive. But
so growing up, like what kind of give me a snapshot of like childhood Matt Kirshen. What was going on?
It was very suburban where I grew up. You know, it's like right on that cusp of London where it's just sort of town one way and then fields in the other direction. You know, very not inner city. Pretty pleasant. Was a little dorky kid. This comes as a huge surprise to anyone who's seen me as. Yeah, it's kind of weird that you know that I grow into the jock that you now see. this bro that became your friend, Ron, as I came over here and was doing comedy. But actually a little nerdy kid.
Little nerdy guy.
When I was younger.
Well, did you get into science? Like, have you been into it your whole life? Like, were you like a science guy growing up?
Yeah, that was definitely science and mathematics. Like math was my university degree, and yeah, they were the subjects I was naturally most good at and enjoyed the most. Maybe I'd imagine those two are probably connected. You know, you sort of drift towards the things that you are naturally able at. but they made sense to me. I think they made sense to me in a way that I didn't really. It's weird because I now write for a living, but I didn't really get English. I didn't get the arts. I didn't understand when I was younger how a subject could not have a correct answer.
That's interesting.
Like I liked that absolutism or that correctness of, if you get an equation, you solve the equation, you get the answer, and if you've done it correctly, you have the same answer that the teacher has that's in the answer book, and you get a tick. And if you get it wrong, you get a cross. But it's like it's there, it's not. There's the correct answer to the science. Science is a little fuzzier because as you go through it and as you get more experience, you go from sort of junior to more senior to up to, I didn't do university level, but as you keep going, you keep getting told, actually, the thing we told you is not 100% correct. It's a little more subtle and complicated than that. But even still, there is still like a right answer or wrong answer, kinda. I mean, science is a bit more like we're erring towards the right answer. But then you get to English, and there isn't any of that. You just go, two people could write completely contradictory essays, one person arguing one thing and one person arguing the exact opposite thing, and they can both get A's because it's about how well you have interpreted this text, and how well you have constructed and formulated your argument. And it has nothing to do. But I was like, but what's the solution of the book? Like, what does the author? Surely the author means one of those two. The author, you're wrong. One of these people is wrong. And that didn't make. I didn't get that at the time. I think maybe a teacher could have explained that to me, and I would have been like, oh. But at the time, I was just like, well, that can't. Someone's got to be wrong.
Dude, this is a kind of trippy experience on what you just brought up. So I was published when I was in grad school, and my piece was actually used, I think, in a couple textbooks, but I did see the result in one of them, which, by the way, man, they could use that stuff in textbooks. They don't have to give you a dime, and they don't even need to tell you. But
what
yeah,
were you
right.
Published in? What was the subject?
It was some communication. Yeah,
okay, cool.
It was a communication textbook, and there was like reading questions after. So I mean, how could you not look at that? Like, you're curious, and so there's literally like a reading question in this textbook.
Right, like how does a teacher interpret the thing that you wrote, and what are meaningful questions that you could ask about the things? So it would be like, what did Placome mean by?
Yes, that question was in there, and I had no idea what the fuck the answer was. And I read it, and it is a piece that I wrote years ago, so it wasn't fresh in my head. But like, I read this thing, and it goes, "What was Placome inferring when he said blah blah blah?" And I'm just like, I have no fucking idea. And then I skimmed the piece again, and I'm like, I still don't know. I'm like, if any student says.
I think Placome was inferring that he needed to make up the word count, and he was on his fifth coffee, and he has no.
He's saying, I hope they don't send me another round of edits. That's what Placome was inferring there. Yeah, if any student submitted that, you'd have to give them an A. They are technically correct. But yeah. So you liked math. Well, when did comedy come into your life then?
Well, it was there as. I mean, I always liked it. I never admitted, like, publicly that it was something I was, like, interested in as the idea of actually creating it. But I always, I would always drift towards, like, the comedy TV shows, like the sitcoms, and then stand-up when it started. When I was younger, there wasn't much stand-up on British TV. There were, like, a couple of the big names, and then, like, a handful of TV names. And then probably somewhere in my mid-teens was when a combination of Channel 5, Channel 4, and cable TV, like satellite TV, all started in the UK. And Channel 4 was a bit earlier, but basically around that time, these extra channels appeared. And like in the US, they suddenly needed content, and it sort of coincided as a kind of feedback with an increase in the stand-up comedy scene in the UK. So there were suddenly more clubs, and there were more comedians, and there were more places for them to do stand-up on TV. So suddenly there were all shows like Live at the Comedy Store, and Live at Jongleurs, and the BBC stand-up show, and there was, I can't remember, there was one called Gas. Anyway, there were a bunch of these TV shows suddenly that were chucking all these of the comedy network, the Avalon Comedy Network, and they were all putting just stand-ups on TV, like the equivalent of Evening at the Improv. And suddenly there was all this stand-up when I was maybe 15, 16. And then I hit 18, and I remember like I would start to go to comedy clubs. I would go to like the pro comedy clubs, but also I remember dragging some friends to some sort of open mic nights as well. With a, hey, let's go to comedy tonight. This one's only £2. Why don't we just go and see this one?
Wonder why it's only £2.
But with this thing in the back of my head, because I knew, I didn't know much about how the comedy scene worked, but I knew enough to know that if I ever got the guts to do stand up, I knew I would start at the comedy store.
Okay, so you knew that.
Like I knew, yeah.
Okay.
Like I knew I don't start at like Friday night at the comedy store that costs however much to get in. I would start at one of these rooms above a pub where most of the comics are amateurs, and then they maybe have like the pro act on at the end who's half a step up from the open mics, who's getting paid £30 to do 10 minutes at the end rather than 4 minutes.
You kind of knew the anatomy of the scene. Like you kind of knew like a little bit.
At the most basic level. Like I knew enough to kind of like, I wasn't, which I thought would be fairly obvious. But then as you start doing stand up and you hear other people's first gig stories and you realize just how massive, I don't know what your first gig was, but do you ever?
I have the opposite experience to you. I knew nothing.
Because I know people who just like did the most absurd things for their first gig. Like I know someone who booked a room for like an hour to all of his friends and was just like, this is what you do, right? You book a show, you write a show. And then, so like his very first gig was an hour to everyone he knew. And like starting and finishing with a song, like just everything.
And now none of them are friends with him anymore.
Yeah. And you just go like, I can't believe, but this is someone who carried on doing stand-up. That would, the sort of balls of that, and just other things. I know people who signed up for like music open mics and was just like, I'm going to tell my jokes instead, and just like I would now. But then I guess you just have that naivety. So I had that naivety. I was a little more aware of how it worked, but I still had a level of chutzpah that I don't think I would have now, where I just rock up and go like, you need to put me on.
Yeah, no, dude. I mean, that seems so much more grounded compared. My first time, well, it's weird. Technically, my first time was in Florence, Italy, because I was studying abroad, and we decided, like everyone in our we had like a little campus community thing. Everybody in our group, we decided to have a talent show, and I mean, I could sing and play guitar. That was like the only thing I could contribute. But there was no guitar available. So I like wrote a little comedy sketch. It was more of a sketch than like stand up, but I did it and it was fun. But I don't really count that. So like my technical first time.
But I do count that. And that's a fairly good safe space. Yeah. And that's also a fairly good safe space to do your first gig. So that's also kind of, the stakes are low. You're amongst friends. There's not much expectation. It's just like you're doing a sort of a silly skit at a talent night. Basically.
It was a silly skit at a talent night with a bunch of my drunk college buddies, and we had all just spent 6 weeks together, studying abroad, quote unquote. But really,
so it's all like inside jokes and everything, and
all inside jokes. Yeah, none of it would have made sense anywhere outside of that room. Reference some of the teachers, et cetera, et cetera. But then, and there were a couple years in between this. But I decided after that night, I was like, well, I guess stand-up's something I know how to do now, even though I know nothing about it. So my first actual
because you had that first good laugh. I
had that first good laugh. Yeah, all bunch of college friends drunk in a room. And so my first actual gig was in Bloomington, Indiana. And this was before they had, because I went there. And this was before they had the club. But it was a sold out night. Like they had a comedy like road room that operated every Saturday and Monday, which was random timing, but it was Saturday and Monday.
Okay.
And I did an opening guest set for Greg Morton. So sold out room. Greg Morton was in town. I had no idea what I was doing. Had never done stand up before. And I didn't even know you were supposed to write stuff out ahead of time. I thought that I thought that for my friends, I was writing a skit for my friends. But if you really do stand up, you just go up there. That was what I
You
thought.
just like riff. You just like, it's like jazz. It just flows out of you, right? That's what we.
Yes, made no sense.
See, at least I knew that as well. I at least also knew that you are meant to write material that you repeat. I'd also, you know what I think partly it was I'd watched enough comedy because of these channels that have started up, and because I started going to comedy clubs, that I would see comedians frequently enough that I would recognize the same bits. So I don't think I had any of that kind of like, they just make it up every time, because I'd be like, no, I've seen Ed Byrne do his Alanis Morissette routine on 2 different TV shows. Like I've seen
you were
this.
a genius compared to me.
So at least I was aware of that. But again, I know people who did that. I know people who maybe did write, but also thought you had to write a completely new set every single show. And so for the first 6 months, never repeated a joke. And then just
right. Oh yeah, you see people do that still. Yeah, but I
kind of had to do that when I started, because I started, my first few gigs were student gigs, so it's the same audience coming back every time. So I was writing new stuff every time.
Yeah.
But also it was only 3 minutes at a time, and it was in front of an incredibly friendly audience. So it's probably not a bad thing that I was writing new stuff every time. And
that's awesome.
Then when I started doing London open mics, I sort of had these 5 different 3-minute sets, so I could kind of go, okay, I'm doing 5 minutes of this one. I can just kind of take the best minute from each of them and sort of jam it together.
Yeah. Do you know Andy Hendrickson?
Yeah.
So Andy, and I don't think, I mean, I've seen Andy around since, we've met since, but I don't think he remembers me in this capacity, or if he does, he's been too polite for many years to ever mention it. But Andy was the feature that night. Okay. And he was just the feature act that night. And again, I knew nothing. I went up there as a guest set, just riffed, bombed royally, was holding the mic like I was singing in a band. It was terrible.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, it was atrocious.
Did you holding it like you're singing in a band? Presumably you mean holding it sort of horizontally and right up on it.
Right up on it. Right.
But then were you also doing the thing, because I've stopped new acts from doing this one. The other thing that singers do is in between lines, dropping the mic down by your hip and then bringing it back up again when you talk again. And it's just no, you're not dancing between waiting for a guitar break and then the mic comes back up for this. No, you keep it there the whole time.
I did the Axl Rose 2-step. That's what I did. I had a whole dance. No, I don't even remember, but it was so bad. And so afterwards I go up to Andy and I'm like, hey, do you have any advice? And he goes, I think it might be a good idea if you wrote jokes. And I go, thank you. And I wrote that advice down. I was like, write jokes. Andy.
Step 1, Ron's notebook, comedy notebook. 1, write jokes.
Yes.
2, jokes.
Yeah. Write jokes.
Great.
Recite them. Yeah. Yeah, it was great. And he wasn't even trying. I mean, maybe he was sort of just fuck this kid, but it seemed like he was just sincere about it. Well, I think you should write jokes.
Which, it appears to have worked. You appear to have taken that advice on board, given that, however many years down the line, you're now a touring comedian.
I did take the advice. Yeah, so that was my first time. So you went to comedy nights, and then so was your first time at just an open mic at the Comedy Store then?
No. My first gig was a student gig, and it was here's my experience.
What does that mean exactly? I mean, obviously it means a college thing, but was there a regular night?
So I'd already started to write comedy. So my first experience of actually writing comedy in any kind of organized way, there was a college funny paper that was stylistically basically a ripoff of somewhere between The Onion and Private Eye and Viz. And I started writing for that. My friend Richard and I started submitting pieces and articles and stuff like that. And that was my first experience. And then I eventually ended up being the editor of that. And that was my first experience of writing comedy in an organized fashion and then watching people enjoy it. it would come out every Friday lunchtime, and then you see everyone reading this thing, and they point at bit. That was my first sort of acknowledgement, like public acknowledgement that I can actually create comedy in some format and have people respond positively to it. And then my friend James said he was going to do this night. It was like a student comedy night. It was all students performing for students. And this one particularly was specifically for people doing it for the first time. It was like the second one of the year, and every year they would do it like that. They do like the first one of like, this is what we do. And then the second one of the year would be like, and this is for the comedy virgins. And James said he was going to do it. And I kind of knew I couldn't sit in the audience and watch James do this thing that I'd wanted to do myself. I couldn't just kind of cheer him on from the sidelines. I kind of went like, oh yeah, well, why don't I sign up as well? We'll both sign up. So that was my first gig. So I signed up for that, and I did it. And
What's James doing now? Is he still doing comedy too?
No, he's not. And he was funny. He had some good stuff, and he was doing all right as a new comic. He's got they had those like new act competitions, and he did well in that. And he had some funny jokes, but he didn't have, his heart wasn't in the sort of the grind of it. So he works, I think, I can never remember exactly what he works for, a book publishers now, and has a family and a perfectly nice normal life. But he had a great first gig. He had a much better first gig than me. He crushed it. I did okay. I did well enough to get the bug. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like gig number 1 was okay. Gig number 2 was fantastic. Gig number 3 died on my hole.
Yeah.
So, and that was, and I always wonder about that, because you had your first good gig as well. You had your first one in front of your friends. And I always wonder how many comedians never existed, like never made it to actually doing comedy because they had their bad gig first and they never made it to number 2. Well, if those three gigs had happened the other way around, then I would just I'd probably work. I don't know. Maybe I'd do it again, but I reckon I'd be working in an office right now and have that story of that one time I did stand up.
That's so interesting because so many people have the story. Like yours is actually a little bit of a variation. And I guess maybe mine's not in a way, but kind of is too, where they say, oh yeah, I killed my first time. Then I bombed for months. But that seems to be so many people's story.
I think it is. You have like first, like beginner's luck, beginner's energy. For me, it was like, I didn't kill first time, but I did just well enough to get the bug. And then my second time was really fun. And then the third time was horrible. And they went up and down for a while, but by that point I was hooked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 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 Once there's like a few butts, it's like you're pretty much, you're kind of hooked, or you're like really not, like you really just like the resolution is over and you're done, like something like that. Yeah.
You get it out your system. Maybe. I mean, again, who knows? It could go completely either way, but for me, I was in. And then actually, I think it was actually even James again, because he lived near Liverpool and he said, I might do a gig when I'm back in Liverpool over Christmas. And I went, well, then I need to do one in London. So is that what we're doing? And I don't think he actually did in the end, but I remember signing up. There was a website called, what was it called? It was a comedy club in Bristol with the, good God, comedy club names. It was called Virgin Mirth.
Okay.
And that website like listed the open mics around the country. Like it had like a list of places you could message that would give you gigs. And so I used that list and I just cold emailed a bunch, and then a couple of them got back to me, and one of them went like, what are you doing on Wednesday? And I went, or whatever day of the week it was. So I just did it. And that was my first London gig.
How was it?
Again, I got lucky because that gig I went to later. Was it? I can't remember what day of the week it was, but it was a bar in Islington called the Purple Turtle, and that gig I didn't know was notorious as being one of the worst new act nights, like one of the toughest. It could be an absolute shit show, but I caught it on a good night. I had a really fun gig. I was so green that like I did my set, and then the host, Paddy Bramwell's his name, I've got to know him since, but he went after his set, he went, Matt, you haven't done much comedy, have you? And I'm like, from the audience, I was like, no. And he went, because you asked me before your set if I was going to go up in between every act. Because I didn't know, because my first few gigs have been student gigs, so it'd be like those gigs have been like almost like a theater show. It'd been a mixture of like stand up and sketches, and it would just be like there'd be a running order. So like 3 people would go on and do a sketch, and then they'd leave, and then someone would walk out with a microphone and do a stand up bit for 3 minutes, and then someone else would do a sketch, and there wasn't like an MC, or there was an MC, but they would come on off at various times and not always in between. So I was like, so when are you going to go on before me and introduce me? And he was like, yeah, I'm hosting the show. Okay, cool.
That's awesome. That is so funny, dude.
So yeah, I didn't know any of that. But I caught it on a good night. The next time I was there, was like there was a fight in the room. The police were called. Like this
wow.
Mother and daughter were dragged out of the pub by the police, while one of them was so hammered she was like on the phone to the police claiming that someone is grabbing her, not aware that it was the police who was doing that.
Wow.
Like that was what that venue could be. But I caught it on a sweet spot. I caught it on a good one. So that was my first like grown up, not just students, actual adults in the room gig.
That's amazing. So eventually you graduate with a math degree. You're doing open mic.
Just about scraped through. It was touch and go, but yeah, I got
really?
through the degree, and then I moved back in with my parents, and because they lived on the outskirts of London, so then I started just doing the London open mic scene, and then also quite quickly got out of town. That was a big bit of advice that someone gave me, which was get out of town as soon as you can.
Town being London or just
yeah, absolutely. Because London, you get like 5-minute sets for no money, and there's a really big gap between the open mics and the pro gigs. But out of town, because there aren't as many gigs, it's like it's a much smaller scene in each of these other cities. So it's much easier to bridge the gap. So if you're willing to drive and you're willing to be a chauffeur for the professionals, then you could get 10-minute sets, and they might even throw you like £20 here or there. And it's a much quicker path to bridge that gap between the amateur nights and it's not in London. It was like, these are the amateur nights, these are the pro nights. But in, say, Birmingham, it was a lot more like, this is a pro night that has a few amateur guest spots on it.
Okay. So I mean, the states are kind of the same, just like a bit like it's like, before you go to New York or LA, go to a smaller market in the Midwest and try to get your chops 100%. On the road.
Yeah, people who start in LA and New York, I don't know how they do that, because again, and they're particularly the ones who don't really leave LA. You're like, at least go to like San Diego, or if you're in New York, go to like Atlantic City or like Boston, or just any of these places that you can get to in only a few hours. Like, go get out there. And you will find more stage time. You'll find better stage time. You'll find that you learn how to perform to people who aren't just from your town and don't respond to jokes about the transit system in your town.
I also think there's something to be said. I mean, I don't know. And there's plenty of people that have, started in London, New York, LA do just fine. But I feel like it's I don't know. I mean, to me, it just honestly seems a little less fun, because it's just so like you're already in the capital. Like there's so much pressure already.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, exactly. And it's just, you only, I feel like people remember you as you were when you were new and green.
Right.
And it's kind of useful to make those mistakes. Like when you are make those mistakes in Des Moines. Suck it, like.
So where'd you go?
Bomb in Iowa, and then come to LA as a fairly established thing. Just realized I can change my name and put my surname in here as well, so that if you're clicking stuff, there you go. Look at that. I should have done that right at the beginning.
Nailed it. So where'd you go first when you left London?
I don't remember when my first gigs were. I think there was one like around Birmingham. There was one. I can't remember where they all are. I can tell you the first place I headlined, and I use that in the loosest possible sense.
All right.
Because I remember Swansea University Student Union. I got booked to be like the 20-minute paid spot at the end of the night, and I got £20. And I drove there by myself and back. It probably cost me about at least 1.5, if not twice that, in gas money, and I could not have been more thrilled. And by the way, Swansea is in Wales. That's a different country, as you know. You've toured in the UK, so basically, I drove to another country to lose money to headline, and that was the biggest thrill. I couldn't. Yeah, that was amazing.
Oh, I remember my first road itinerary, I literally printed it out and like saved it on my computer. And it was I don't know if you ever got to do one, but I'm sure you know about them. It was a Tribble run.
I was about to ask if it's a Tribble run. I never did. Yeah. I've never done a Tribble run. I did meet Tribble once out at I think it was at Bridgetown. He was there at outside a venue, and it was just like, it's like meeting this myth.
Yeah.
Like this. Yeah. Legendary. For the listeners who don't know, this is a guy who basically books all these one-nighters, mostly around the northwest of the country, and they're put together in runs, and they are, so it'll be like 3 gigs, 4 gigs in a row sometimes, and with anything up to like 7-8 hours drive in between them.
Yeah, because it's we're talking Montana, we're talking Idaho, Eastern Washington. Right. This is like,
you're like
very,
driving
very
through
rural.
Which again starting in the UK, that's a huge advantage because the UK is so much more densely populated. Like if I head north from where I used to live with my parents, in the space of like 5 hours, I would pass 10 major cities.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you start in Idaho and you drive in one direction, you could pass a cow. Nothing else.
Oh yeah, it's wild.
You'll hopefully pass enough gas stations so that you can keep going until you hit the next.
Oh yeah, there would be certain Tribble run itineraries where they would tell you to fill up by a certain point because they were like, you have to fill up here because if you don't, you're not going to make it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah, dude, it was intense, and I was getting paid like $50 or $75 a show. And it was, but I was so excited. Like, I mean, there's no way, I didn't make a dime when all was said and done, but.
Yeah. I think Patton Oswalt said something, I'm going to have to paraphrase, but it was something along the lines of, if someone told you that 2 hours drive from your house, there's a bucket with $100 in it, would you drive there to pick it up? Like, but tell a comedian there's a gig on the end of that as well. That's like.
Yes. So, all right. So you're starting to basically do some road work. Now you were still living in London. You were just getting out when you could to spread your wings.
Yeah. So I was living, for the first year and a half, I was living at my parents. So I was just back at my folks. I was doing those gigs and starting, firstly for no money, and then starting to get, I also very clearly remember the first person who ever paid me, which is that one stuck in my head, which was, there's a promoter called around Manchester called Agraman, the Human Anagram. That's his name. He goes on. He's great. He's one of the sort of like stalwarts of the Manchester scene. He's been around forever. So many people got their breaks through him. He runs a club. He used to run a club called The Buzz. He runs a few other nights. And he'd go on and he'd do like a series of really bad puns and then tell the audience like, do you want more of me or shall I bring on an act? And they were like, bring on an act. Great guy. But I was doing a different gig in Manchester. Like 4 of us drove up in the car to do this gig. But one of the guys, Steve Day, was doubling with The Buzz. So we went there first so that Steve could open that gig. And then we went over to this other gig in Altrincham. And one of the guys in the car, Gary Delaney, introduced me to Agraman and said, and gave me a nice like intro. And Agraman went, oh, do you want to do a 5-minute guest set? And this is how green I was at this point. I prepared a 10-minute set for the other gig. So I was like, oh, I don't know. I've like,
I don't know if I can do that.
I've already got my like 10 in my head. And Gary just went, yes, Matt, you do want to do this gig. I was like, yeah. No, I want to do this gig. So I did it and it went nicely. And then he gave me like £10 for my time.
Nice.
Which is, I mean, what a mensch. Like,
that's more than a pound a minute.
Yeah, firstly, more than a pound a minute. Yeah, £2 a minute. And also for a gig that I wasn't booked for and was just doing a guest set on. Yeah. And he just gave me money for my time. So that's just like, he's one of life's good people, as is Gary, by the way. And And so that was the first money I got for doing comedy. And it went straight to the driver for gas money.
Sure.
But it was like, that was my first, but then I didn't lose money on that gig. I went to Manchester and back. I did 2 sets. I did the 10 went well at the other one. Gary, by the way, blew the roof off of that show. That was the first, he does one-liners, and that was the first time I see someone just doing one-liners and just taking the room apart. It was great. But yeah, that was my first money. That was the first person who paid me anything for doing comedy, was for a guest set that I wasn't booked at.
So how did you eventually wind up in the US?
Oh, Last Comic Standing season 5.
Okay. So it was
I don't know if you.
Well, and I know you were on it, but I mean, like, what was the? I mean, like what was like the thought process and whatnot? Like, you just
very little. So if I don't.
Okay.
So yeah, January. So the show, you know, they had a gimmick every year, and the gimmick that year was like, we're going international. So they did all the American auditions, but they also did Sydney, Montreal, London, and combined with that, it was also going to be broadcast in the UK for the first time. It hadn't had a broadcast partner before that, so it was going to be shown on the Paramount Comedy Channel, as it then was, which is basically Comedy Central UK. And yeah, all of the Brits were kind of wary of this thing, because it was like, oh, this weird American competition show, what is this, what are we going to do? Like, agents were trying to talk us into it, and someone who I knew at Paramount was organizing the auditions and said, like, you should go along to this. So I did, like, a little reticent, little unsure, but I did it, and it went well, and I got through, and then I got through again, and I got through again. You know, sort of got through all the bits where they like flew me out to LA, and I got through the semifinals and then into the finals. And by the time that show was done, I had a 2-year visa and a TV credit in America. So I'm here. And then like, a decade and a half later, I'm still here.
Yeah. No, well, when did you? I mean, was it literally just the show wrapped and you're like, well, there's no point for me to go back? Like what did?
Kinda, yeah. Basically, yeah. I will say I definitely screwed this up. Where for too long I spent I spent too long kind of flitting between the two countries. I think you can do it a bit more now because so much stuff is remote. But back then, LA really wanted to know that you were available, that they had like full use of you. And I thought I was kind of getting the best of both worlds and getting both bookings. But really, what was happening for a couple of years was America always thought I was in the UK, and the UK always thought I was in America. So that was a mistake with hindsight. And in 2011, I went, I'm getting rid of my London place. I'm making a go of it in America. Because also by that point, I had a few things in America. I started to get some other TV things. And then you just look at it and go, there's so much of this in England. Like, England has like 50 versions of this face and voice. And America doesn't. So why wouldn't I be, firstly, the place where I'm different, where I stand out? And secondly, the place that has a higher ceiling for opportunities. Yeah.
How was, what'd you think of the weather? How was that adjustment for you? Like, were you stoked? Were you like, it still hasn't rained?
The one thing I had to get used to, and I still forget this to this day, like a decade and a half later, is you forget that LA isn't a desert. My friend Emery, who I stayed with when I first moved to LA, sometimes I'd be like, I was just really wiped out today. And he was like, have you had any water? But like, no, I haven't. And then I drink a glass of water and feel fine and realize like, that's how dumb I was, like just consistently dehydrated.
Yeah.
Because you look out and it's just a city, you know, there's grass and there's green stuff and there's regular houses, but you go like, no, none of this should exist. We are in a desert right now that has been brutalized into looking like a regular town, but we're not in a regular town right now. We should not be here. And you need to constantly neck water. Otherwise, you're going to be really tired.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I still need to be reminded. I still need to be mindful of it. And yeah, I still probably don't hydrate enough. But
generally, no. Generally, no. I like it. I like being warm. I guess sometimes it's really grim in the heat, dead of the summer. But No, it's doable. I was just in Chicago doing some gigs. I got back 2 days ago, and it was like 10 degrees Fahrenheit the day I left in Chicago, which for the Brits and the Europeans, that's, what is it, like 22 below? That's like minus 16, I think, or something. Is that?
I wish I knew. Yeah, that sounds
conversion?
right. Isn't it 35 Fahrenheit is 0? Is that how it is?
32 is 0.
32 is
so
0. Okay.
Yeah. So it's 22 Fahrenheit below freezing, which is it's about like 12 and a half, 12, 13 Fahrenheit. I mean, I'm now going to have to look this up because it's going to bug me. I'm terrible at mental arithmetic. But either way, freezing. And then I landed in LA and it was 75. And I was just like, this is so much nicer. Yeah, minus 12.2.
Minus 12.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, you nailed it.
Okay.
So how did Probably Science get started?
So I'd had this, podcast has started. It was fairly early for podcasts, but people were doing them a bit. And in the space of a week, I happened to gig with both Andy Wood and Brooks Whelan, and both of them talked about science stuff on stage. And I'd had this idea bubbling around about like maybe we should do some sort of comedy and science thing. And Andy was an electrical engineer and talked about that in his act. And Brooks was still working as a biomedical technician. Like right up until he got SNL, I think he was working in that job. I don't think he actually even quit. Like you'd have to talk to Brooks about this, but I think he just sort of didn't show up to work for a few days, and then suddenly he was on TV, and they're like, I guess he doesn't work here anymore.
Wow. That's a cool mic drop moment.
I could be wrong about that, but I feel like there was some sort of sloppiness there. But like in the space of a week, I gigged with both of those guys and was like, oh, now I know these two different comedians who both have some kind of science background, and we got together and we're like, maybe we could do a thing. And then we like went to Guitar Center and bought a cheap mixer and a couple of mics, and we did a couple of test episodes, and then we just never stopped.
But then when did Jesse come into the picture?
So Jesse used to live with Andy. Mm-hmm. In fact, did you ever go to that house?
I crashed there a few times. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and you would have been to like parties and stuff. So this house, it was an odd situation. Like it was someone who Jesse knew from Nashville owned this house.
Well, Jesse's dad, I think, right?
Yeah, because Jesse's dad's a bluegrass musician.
Yeah,
and this house, it was Jesse, Andy, and these two old guys who were both kind of cautionary tales of what could go wrong. Like one of them was a sort of like sleep eater. He'd I remember walk naked into the kitchen and just like microwave a bowl of shredded cheese, eat it in the nude, and then throw the whole bowl and fork in the trash and then go back to bed. And then the other guy was a former soap actor with a drinking problem, who would walk past us when we record. We used to record in the backyard, and he'd walk past us if we were recording and just go like, "Hey guys, have a good blog." So
have a good blog.
I know. It was like near enough. You gave it a good shot. But
nice.
So they were in this weird situation, but this house was great. It was like an old, like valley mansion that got bought out, and I can't remember. Some famous actress bought it initially and flipped it.
Oh, really?
Now Dan Harmon lives there, but it's unrecognizable from the house it used to be. Like what used to be the main house is now like the sort of side guest house, and what used to just be like the pool house that the soap actor lived in is now like a 2-story main house.
Really? I can't even picture that. That's wild.
Yeah, but it still has the same pool in the middle. It's still got that kind of courtyard. And it was amazing. When it was like there, they had this huge pool, this massive courtyard. It was the best for pool parties. Every summer, they do parties there. But so Andy lived with Jesse. Jesse would be a guest on the show quite a bit. He also wrote wrote and produced the theme music for us because Jesse does cool music stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then once Brooks left the show, Jesse would kind of sit in increasingly frequently as our guest co-host. And then eventually we were just like, you're the co-host, right? You're on the show.
Mm. So
that's how, yeah. And then Jesse got ill. Well, I just listened to, you just recorded an episode of Jesse.
Yeah.
So if you want to know Jesse's full story of getting and then recovering from very low odds ass cancer, that happened. He got ill. He went back to Nashville. So obviously he was off the show for a long time. But then when COVID happened and we started recording remotely, because Jesse still lives in Nashville, we were like, hey, we sort of got Jesse on for a couple of episodes. And then we're like, we can just have Jesse back as the co-host now because we record remotely. There's no reason not to have him back. So he's back on the show. So thank you, COVID. Thank you, that terrible, terrible thing.
No, man, it's I love what you guys do. I was stoked to finally get to do it. It was that was a fun time with you.
Every so often there's someone on where we're like, why? How have we not managed? We've been doing the show for so long. It's absurd that we hadn't had you on before then. But you jumped on fairly recently. To talk about your film and everything. It was really fun.
Yeah, dude, that was a blast. I really loved it. Well, so getting up to present, what you got your citizenship recently.
Yeah, I did.
Which, man, interesting timing.
It is, yeah. I mean, I mentioned it on stage, and I get mixed reactions, and I normally tell them like, yeah, it's nice to join the last season of a show. And
great joke. That's a fantastic joke.
It's but yeah, I'm glad I got it. I'm glad I got it for a few reasons. Firstly, this is my home, for better or for worse. This is where I live. My wife is American. My career is in America. My roots are in America, and I want to be part of that. I want to be part of the process. I want to be able to vote. I've spent the previous decade just going like, hey guys, please don't screw it up for me, whatever. Now at least I get to be a tiny voice in there, minimal voice, given that we live in
it's California, so
California, which is the same. It's the same when I lived in the UK. There were most of the time in the UK, my vote didn't count for much. Actually, where I lived in London for a long time, it would kind of flip a bit between Liberal Democrat and Labour, so it kind of made a difference there sometimes. But and where I live, when I was at my parents' house, that place is just never voting anything other than Conservative. So it's just a drop in the ocean that my vote there. You can still make a difference at the local level, though.
Right.
You can still register a vote. Firstly, I think it's still important to register a vote, even if it doesn't ultimately move the needle. Yeah. And I think the down ballot races, you can definitely make a difference there.
And
so it just feels good.
They're huge. I mean, that's the biggest thing.
100%, which took some getting used to, because that's bizarre. All of these weird referendums with multiple paragraphs of legal text that you're trying to who's behind, and they're always confusingly double negatively phrased, and you go this looks like this is going to be good. Yeah, this will help homeless people, right? And it then turns out no, it's actually going to bulldoze buildings. They're also you have to basically copy someone's homework. You have to find some organization that is vaguely close to your opinions and go I'm going to vote for who they tell me to vote for. I'm going to trust this person because they've done the work and I haven't. But
yeah, you have to look at multiple guides, read multiple explanations. It really is it's so
much work. It's so much work just to vote. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to be a citizen. And then the other reason, it does make my position in this country more secure.
Yeah.
Especially
right now.
Yeah, when I had the green card, that could be revoked at any time. Now I've got the citizenship. I guess there are theoretical ways it could be revoked, but it'd be really hard to. I can also leave the country now for any amount of time and come back, and I will always be a citizen, which you couldn't. The green card, I don't know if you know this, but the green card's normally valid for 10 years. But if you're out of the country for more than 6 months, it can be revoked. You have to sort of demonstrate permanent residency.
Mm-hmm.
So, if something happened, or if I got a job in the UK, or we were just you know what, let's just not be in the US for a bit, or whatever might happen. If I did that, that would potentially cost me my entire right to be in America when I had a green card or when I had a visa. And now I have both passports. I will, at least for the moment, barring a massive constitutional change, I will always be both American and British, which feels good because they are my two identities now. They're the two things. I exist in both these countries. I work, live. Yeah, I'm a part of both these countries. I've lived in America for the majority of my adult life as well now. Because I was like 27 when I did Last Comic Standing. I was 31 when I got rid of my London place. I'm 45 now, 46 this year. So yeah, more than half of my life, of my adult life, has been in America. I want to have that passport. I want to have that citizenship.
Yeah, but well, hey, congrats. It's how was our test? What's it like? Is it pretty easy?
It was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the actual citizenship test bit was okay. I didn't think they were going to make me do the English comprehension bit. I thought if you come from a country, I'd read online that if you come from a country that is a native English speaking country, they don't do that, but they did. I had to like read a sentence and I had to write a sentence, which I wish.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
It was like a fairly simple. I wish I could remember what the sentence was though, because there was like an ambiguous apostrophe in it. I can't remember what it was now, but it was, like the phrase "writer's room" can be written. It would make perfect grammatical sense to write writer's room either with no apostrophe or R apostrophe S or RS apostrophe. And all of those would be correct. They were complete. They're all, you could say writer's room, it's just writers, it's the room that contains the writers. So, it doesn't need an apostrophe, or it could be like the room that belongs to a writer. So it's writer's room, or it could be writer's room, the room that belongs to, all of those make sense.
Yeah.
And the sentence I had to write had one of those. I can't remember what the phrase was, but it had one of those.
Interesting.
Where it could be. So I was like, where do I put the apostrophe? Do I put an apostrophe? What do I do? And then I was like, this cannot be the test, Matt. Why are you stressing? They are not going to fail you over an ambiguous apostrophe. There is not a chance anyone else today who is given that sentence is having this dilemma. Just write the fucking sentence. Just write down this sentence and stop being a dick. And I did, and it was fine. And also, the guy, my interviewer, claimed to recognize me from comedy. Now, I don't know to this day whether he genuinely had seen me on, he said Last Comic Standing, or whether he'd like just Googled me before I came in the room because they have all my info and he just picked a thing. So I don't know. I think he was telling the truth, but he could have just been just making, a bridge or whatever. But once he said that, I was kind of like, I was so much more relaxed because I was like, oh, he's kind of like claiming to know what I do. And that's awesome. So we had that. And then I'm not going to like force material on you, but they did ask me if I'm willing to bear arms to defend the nation. That's in the interview. I now talk about that on stage, but that took me by surprise.
No, I've heard I love your material on it. I've heard you do those bits before. And that's awesome.
So that came out of nowhere. I wasn't expecting that one, but yeah, I did all those questions, and then they went congrats, and then they said, "Do you want to sign it? Do you want to swear in downstairs?" Because I know other people who had to wait for like a few weeks and then go to a swearing in ceremony. And in fact, there's actually been a really shitty story recently where people got the yes, and then they were about to do the swearing in ceremony, and they had their thing revoked because they're from one of the countries that is now got some. Yeah, which is the most.
Oh no!
Absolutely toxic, vicious. Yeah, I mean, just that's the cruelty. The cruelty. But I was asked like, "Do you want to swear in downstairs?" And so I went downstairs, and I was one of the first ones down in that group, and then I had to wait for like another 9 or 10 people to join, and then we all just stood up in a line and we did our swearing in, and we got our certificate. And then I could have gone to like a big ceremony 2 weeks later and done a big swearing in there, but it was midweek, and it was about an hour from LA.
Yeah,
and my wife couldn't have gone. Yeah, and like if it was like at the weekend and I could have gone with my wife and like made it a thing, then I would have done it. But I would have just driven there by myself and just done the same thing that I've already done, but with and with 200 strangers. So I was like, I'm not gonna. I'm in. I'm done. I've done it.
Yeah, I get it. I got.
And then I went. Yeah, exactly. So I got my papers. I got my naturalization certificate. I then went straight to the post office and did my passport. So like I was like, I'm not messing around. Like I was like had it ready to go. Passport done. Got that back in like a couple of weeks, and then yeah, I'm in. You can't get rid of me now. Well,
yeah,
you maybe could, but it'd be really hard to get rid of me.
Yeah, don't give them that challenge. They might might see what these days like they're trying to pull everything they can.
It would be tough. It would definitely take a lot. It would be like Supreme Court business rather than just whim of one person.
One thing we're learning from all this, man, the law doesn't mean much if people aren't going to enforce it.
No, and I
mean,
that's maybe the most depressing thing right now is also just all the institutions still married to the idea of propriety and doing it the right way. And you're going like, you're trying to deal with someone who just goes, the laws don't apply to me.
Yeah, he's breaking them every day.
Just like, well, we can't do this though because that would be against our rules. Like, yeah, but he's already ripped up that contract. So why are you still? You're still trying to show up with a strongly worded letter. Like it's maddening to watch people on the streets knowing how to handle it, and then watching like the people who are meant to be our political superiors still acting in a world that doesn't. Yeah, you know this. But
welcome to the U.S. Just kidding.
Watching it, dear sir, this is just out of order, and we are very disappointed in your behavior. Why are you still talking? Why are you still talking like you're a hotel manager, trying to make guests keep the noise? Like you need to. Anyway,
I hear you, man. I hear you big time. I hope the midterms happen so you get to vote in them. I really do.
Thank you.
Well, me too. I mean, I would be voting in them too, but. Yeah, I hope we both get them.
I do feel pretty confident they'll happen. I think they'll be corrupted. I think there'll be happenings, but
there's always happening. I mean, yeah, the degree is always the question. I mean, because
I'm sure there'll be like intimidation and stuff at the polls, and there'll be even more disenfranchising of voters and people being knocked off the voter roll and not discovering that until they show up in the polling station. Yeah, there'll be all of that stuff happening.
You got to be an inspiration. It's got to be like, look at what Matt went through with the apostrophe. Come on.
Exactly.
You got to go to the polls.
Have an existential crisis over an ambiguous point of grammar that that guy could not have cared less about. I also reckon I could have probably spelled it like a 5-year-old and they still would have gone near enough. Like I reckon, like I don't think I was being examined like it was a PhD in comparative literature. Like I think it was just like, can you speak the language, which by the way, we have been speaking in this room already for the previous 15 minutes. Also, by the way, I showed up with so much stuff they didn't need. Like I thought they needed all this. Like I had this file this thick that had like 6 years of past tax returns, every bit of correspondence they've ever sent me. Like I had all of this stuff, and then I got in the room. Is like ID, passport. All right. It's just I was like, you don't want to look through my 2021 tax return? You don't want to see how little money I earned in 2021 when no comedy was happening?
Yeah. Oh man, where can people go to learn more about you? Plug away.
I guess even though I don't really like it because I've never been a photo person, I think Instagram is where I am the most now. Instagram and Facebook. So I'm on both those, like Matt_Kirshen on Instagram, Matt Kirshen on Facebook. I've got rid of my Twitter is an archived museum of what once was. It doesn't exist. I guess I'm on Blue Sky as well. I'm kind of doing that a bit. Yeah, and then I'm touring. MattKirshen.com. MattKirshen.com has all my tour dates. It has my mailing list. That's like, I'm trying to build a mailing list now because I'm realizing that you can't rely on a social network to not disappear or remain, but very much disappear what it once was.
Could turn into an email list of Nazis at any second.
Exactly. So Probably Science is the podcast, and I'm touring, hopefully near you. Matt Kirshen on the socials, mattkirshen.com. Google, if you Google anything close to my name and put comedian in there, put English comedian Matt K.I. and bang the keyboard, and it'll find me.
Matt, thanks so much for doing this, man.
Ron, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been really good chatting to you.
That was Matt Kirshen. Check out all of his stuff. Check out Probably Science. And by the way, Jesse Case, who we talked about, a mutual friend of ours, and he was on this show in December. That episode is number 116. So if you're looking for more Probably Science host, check out Jesse Case 116. That was a really, really fun episode. Music for the 1000 podcast is provided by Andrew Saxon. Be sure to check out his podcast, the Baywatching Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Please do make sure you're subscribed. Leave us a 5-star review. If you want to join the show on the sustainability end, you can do so over Patreon, patreon.com/romplacone for a Give What You Can level. We have exclusive Zoom hangs. You get the 1000 episodes before they're released to anywhere else. You get insider information on upcoming film and events. And I'm going to be doing some patron-only shows of my new stand-up hour, which is going to be called Anti-Fascist Pasta Night. I just announced that online a little bit ago. And then I have a Substack piece explaining the significance of that name. And I'm going to be doing some patron-only shows where only patrons can attend. So if you want to check that out, patreon.com/romplacone. All right, 124. We are almost at another quarter of a century. We're approaching our second quarter of a century, which is kind of wild. I still can't believe we're over 100, and now we're almost a quarter to 200. That's just how those numbers work. Guys, I know I said it at the beginning, but please look out for each other. Stay safe. I'm always an email away if you need it. Seriously, we really are all we have right now. More so than ever before. So please stay safe. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next week. Peace. Hey guys, Ron Placone here. Take your own 1000 challenge. No, you don't need to interview 1,000 people, although if you want to do that, go for it. Your 1000 challenge can be whatever you want. Maybe you want to call a friend out of the blue once a week. Maybe you want to read a book every month. Maybe you want to start a different garden every season. I guess that might be dependent on where you live. Look, the point of the challenge is taking on an endeavor that enriches your life in some way, and it can be measured. And then, of course, you do it regularly. That's what 1000 is doing for me, and hopefully for you too. The main reason for this podcast and every podcast I've ever done is to build community. So take your own challenge. Then join our Facebook group. It's called 1000 What's Your Challenge? ? That's 1000 What's Your Challenge ? And post about what your 1000 challenge is and the progress you're making. All I ask is that people be encouraging of each other's challenges. This is personal and vulnerable, so be cool. There's enough negativity on social media. We don't need to add to it. For those of you who aren't on Facebook, hopefully in the future we'll be expanding to places like Discord, Reddit, but for now, we're starting on Facebook. And again, that Facebook group is called 1000 What's Your Challenge? See you there.